You know,
you knew that. You know whatever we said is already recorded.
I mean, I haven't seen. I don't know if that's a CD player. I haven't seen that in a long time, but all good. Yeah, I'll try not to say anything on my own Titus. So in this Maisa about the boat, so the Rebbe once always Fabrenged every year on Yutas Kislev, and so the Rebbe one time he spoke about this story, and he said that what taka was the Indian that the Rebbe needed that the captain should stop the boat. Once it already stopped, could have said Kislev then already stopped taka but once it already stopped, what's the mile that the boat should continue and the captain should stop the boat? Once it stops, it's already stopped. So say Kislev was stopping on coming, to another step, and then a deal, and he has to give him a bracha. The Rebbe said that the whole Indian of Chassidus is the Indian to bring Elokus down into this world, into the Gashmis of this world, to make a dir b'tachteinim. He says to serve the Eibishter, you could serve the Eibishter b'derech nes, but it's a bigger chiddush if you take the Gashmis itself and you serve the Eibishter when it's in the teva itself of the world. So you could say a bracha mitzad nes, you could do that. Yeah, it's one level, but if you could do it mitzad the teva, that's already a much higher level. So that's b'chlal. We always live like that, right? We don't look to have a miracle. If it's no choice to have a miracle. But if you don't, the chatchila, the way of right that we serve the Eibushter is al pi teva. There was I don't know if you know that, but I lived down at by Simcha Claire and Bathurst. So over there we have a Maisa with a neighbor. And we bought his property. We're trying to expand and make a kosher place so people could buy kosher food. Anyways, we're still dealing with the guy. But like a year ago, time of COVID, so like in America, they say, when COVID was over, a year ago, we're living in a different planet over here. So, and it's Taka was the last year, almost a year ago, and Taka had COVID, and I was sick at home, and I was thinking that maybe this is a good time. I should make a meeting with this guy, and I could take a little bit of my saliva, maybe leave it on his desk, Patavena from this, where this guy is Stama Nudnik, But I was thinking a lot about this mindset that it's not just the story happened and the story was passed down to to our day, but that the Rebbe should speak about it by Fabrengen. I got Sicha about this Indian, that everything has to be done, it has to be al pi teva. So I decided, okay, we're not going to do this step. Now I can't decide if I regret it or not. But the nakuda is that that it's easy to serve the Eibishter, and everything should be an eifed of nisim. But the lapayil, the aveda is the Eibishter made a world that's al pi teva, and everything's talking with the Helam behest, and our job is to megala the elokus, but with the teva, not to destroy the teva and bring an S. To do it with it, as the Yidden need an S, but zayin an S. L'chaim. You need, but yeah,
Alter Rebbe is in Hadid. She wasn't. It's not where he was next to.
Rebbe was nostalgic, right outside the house. He's buried in the house.
Wasn't Hadid.
Because he was buried. The Stalkos was on the way when they were running away from Napoleon. So on that trip, it was a winter. Past the Chabad Tavis. So it was just very cold, and the people got sick, and Alter Rebbe got sick, and then there was no help. They were basically on the road to travel, and there was no plan where to go, where they're gonna settle. There was no plan. They picked up basically in the middle of the night and moved. So the whole story about where they should put the kvura. Yeah.
Where was he running from? Like where was the Rebbe?
So in the year that he was living in, I believe, in Liozna, and then but Alter Rebbe in the later years, he passed away tough kuf ayin gimel, right? That's almost 209 years ago, 208 years ago. So this Yidua that Napoleon, who was from the French, so there was a big machlekes going on with Russia, and the Alter Rebbe wanted that Russia should win, but not everybody's Yidua. Not everybody felt that. was other tzaddikim, including, I believe, the Deitsch Rebbe, all wanted that they felt Napoleon should win, that they felt it would be better for the Yidden. And it was a ruchnis tikkun machlokes, what's getan better for the Yidden, And the Balter Rebbe said that he felt that it would be better begashmis for Yidden, but he felt that the gash at that stage, that of the where the world was holding, that if the gashmis, we felt if the gashmis would be too good, it would distract the Yidden from Yiddishkeit. And so our diet obviously is different. By us, the Rebbe did not feel that. There's the famous was by the Shiva of the Kapizhin Rebbe in New York, and the Rebbe went to Menachem there, and the Rebbe told him that he should give a bracha to his talmidim, that they should be in Ashiras, Gashmis. The Rebbe told the Kapizhin Rebbe they should give brachas, that they should be Ashirim Gashmis. And he said that he doesn't think it's a good idea because, too much of the Nisayan of Ashiris could be harder than the Nisayan of Anias, And the Rebbe was pushing that our Nisayan of Anias is too hard for us. We can't handle it. We need the Nisayan of Ashiris, as hard as it is, we could have that Nisayan, we could pass better than the Nisayan of Anias. And the Rebbe didn't leave his house until he agreed that he would, But B'chlal, over the years, you do it, that people that came, there's a Balter came, there was I have no idea what the guy's name was. There was a nice Haimish Yid, he came, you could see a little video, a guy comes, he wears an up hat, Siddish Yid, and he comes by and he tells the Rebbe that he was living in New York, so he moved to Eretz Yisrael. So he came back. He's asking for a bracha. So Mamash Pelic answered that the Rebbe tells him that he should fix his jacket. His kapata was left over right. He tells him he should fix it. This is spontaneous, Says that knep in the kapata should be right over left. And this will be the path for Ashiris. Right is chesed, left is gvura, so we need to have more chesed around that'll open up the tzenitis. But if you do about the thing about the Napoleon, that the Alter Rebbe wanted very strong that the Russians should win, and so you do that ad kedei kach that he sent one of his chassidim who knew French well, and he sent him to go to Napoleon's army and to figure out and to spy out basically. And the guy went, and he worked his way up, and he became up there, And he came in there and he was sitting there with the generals in the plannings, and they were talking. Every time they do another move, the Russians are there and they chop them, they stop them. Actually, a few years ago, they released a book. I didn't see it that it was printed in Yiddish, but in the English, there was always the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Zechrenis. The Rebbe wrote his Zechrenis, and they made 2 volumes. We were kids, so it's in Yiddish. They reprinted in English, called the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Memoirs, but they made also volume 3. And over there, they have their Maisa that this chassid would send back the messages when they're coming and where they're coming to. And so one time they were coming, it says there that one time they were coming with a group of, to Napoleon to come into Chapa building, was a warehouse where the Russians kept a lot of their ammunitions. I don't know what kind of ammunitions those days, but whatever, So so there was this whole warehouse, and it was disguised like a warehouse, but it was full of equipment. And they heard about it, so they were coming there to attack this place. But the Russians knew about it through the spy, and they had kids that was playing their ball outside, and they were waiting. Taka, and when they came, Taka made a whole taram and got rid of them, and they were protected the building. So in other words, there was mamish steps that were done that mamish helped that the Russians shouldn't fall under because of this, and it was thanks to this thing. So eventually, so you do it like a mice, but it's really very Yisaidistic Maisa that he knows how to come. Comes with his own l'chaim. Very good. We'll share. I understand. Yeah. Very good. Very good. The bottle doesn't make it through the night. Don't worry. So open it up. So you do it. So Napoleon himself, when he heard, he realized that something's leaking information here, and he came into the room where the general, everybody was sitting there, and he says, somebody here is leaking information. It's got to be a spy in the room. And he walked around, and he comes straight to this chassid, this disguised chassid, and he puts his hand onto his heart to feel, if he's nervous, if the heart is beating fast. This is very calm. And that's it. The commotion's over, and he leaves. Later, after everything was over, so the chassid came back to the Alter Rebbe, and we told him about what happened at that time. The Alter Rebbe told him that the reason why you were able to stay calm, and have that, he said, because you mastered what it says in Tanya, the inyan of mayach shalat alalev. This nakuda, to have the mayach shalat alalev, you worked on it so much, and Taka affected you were able to do it. Because really, when you think about it, this is one of you say this when a person learns chassidus, especially in the Tanya, but it's my mother and all over the place. You more and more you learn the inyan of that. Based off, both are very important. So the Eibishter with the mayach with the leiv. The shaila is which one is in charge. It's not a shaila, but I won't ask you what the. But the point is that based off the Eibishter made, you have the mayach versteht the inyan, right, and then you have of the leiv. And this actually was the big machlekes really at the time, even from the Talmidei Magid, this, because which is the better avodah to serve the Eibishter, with the heart or with the mind? They're both very important. If your heart, you feel, you have the emotions, you see, you could be in the right place. The other hand is, do you get it in your mind? Do you have the verstehst the inyan, or you're just following along with your emotions? And both are very important. But the Alter Rebbe felt very strong that the nakuda of everything is through the brain. And he said, if you have, that's where the whole idea of, he started the derech of Chabad, to use the Chachma bin Adas, to pashtei and then connect with the Torah so deep that he said that the heart will automatically follow. You don't have to work on it. It will be the derech hamela. If you have the mayach really strong, and pashtei inyan with the Chachma, with the Bina, with the Adas, inyan and Torah and Allah, everything will be so through, then automatically everything will follow. But it's a different way. That's why they say always, chassidim always, even when they sleep, they make sure to sleep with a pillow. Even if we sleep with two pillows all year, so Tisha B'Av, you could take off one pillow, you still have a pillow. Because the point is that you should always have that the head should be higher. We have to know that there has to be the mayach shalat al-leiv. There has to be that if the mayach is there, and you really, really verstehst, and we haravet, all the different levels of haravanya, then the chachma is there, the brain is there, it's healthy, it's strong, and then the chamela, the leiv follows. I want to share with you a small story. For this, let's say l'chaim first. So can Chaim. Yeah.
Does it make sense to say that it's a strategic thought? Russians win, and they found out that the Rebbe supported Napoleon. That's the end of the world, right? It's al-Sakha. You're living in Russia, you support the whole team. It's not necessarily about philosophy, because you don't go against it. You never find really the evil went against the scholarship. Other than that, it's support Napoleon, even though they're living. You're living under support Napoleon. I'm talking about the
Listen, the derech klal, the inyan is that you support your country if you find that your country is, working with you in the service in the Avodas Hashem. That's really, ultimately, it's all about the Avodas Hashem. That's that's really ultimately the big thing. Probably, yeah. In those days.
They had never role, whatever they did themselves or
Listen, by the way, there was a time when Alter Rebbe was in Tfisa. There was a time when Alter Rebbe was in Tfisa, and they were asking Alter Rebbe a lot of shilos. You do that now from Tafshinun when the communists fell. So through certain connections, they got to some files of the Russian government that we never had before. We knew certain things, certain stories, came out in the time that Rebbe was in jail, but other things we didn't mamish know. And so one of the things we know that the ministers of education and the other ministers, the big fashtaers, they came to the jail. They heard about the story with the wagon on Erev Shabbos. They heard about the boat. So they wanted to see themselves. Especially the Alter Rebbe. Ultimately, he was sentenced in prison on the taina of treason, going against the government. He was signing letters for people to collect money for tzedakah to send to Eretz Yisrael. That was used because Eretz Yisrael then was under the Turkish rule, right? So the whole taina was played on that, which is considered to be the worst aveda you could do, is go against the government. And ultimately, that the Tsar himself, you do it. This Maisa, the Rebbe has this one part of the story, but I'll tell you this another second part. The famous part was that the Tsar came, and he Nicholas too, and he wanted to see for himself who this great person is. So he took Taka the boat and came to the prison. The Rebbe was in a place where there was no light, just with a candle. And he came he dressed in regular clothes like a Russian peasant. And he walked into the cell, and the Rebbe stood up and gave him covered like the king is there. So he said, you can't see me? I'm not the... So the Rebbe told him that steht in Zayar that Malchusa the Ara Ken Malchusa the Rakia, that the Malchus, the kingship, sovereignty in this world is Ken. It's a mirrored off the idea of Malchus in the higher worlds. So when you came in, I felt the Malchus come in. He felt it. So they sat there and they spoke for a long time. And from these files, that was the scholar. It was the scholar that when the Tsar himself comes, they had Stamba Shamash there, wrote everything down. And so he asked Alter Rebbe if he desires to be the Tsar, to be the Malchus. If he has this desire, because he was talking so much, about Malchus, the Arak, and Malchus, the Rakia, and they read a lot of his Maimarim and the Chassidus, because they wanted to understand it, and he speaks all about the Eibishter, He speaks about Malchus and Malchus and Malchus, and they said, is this something that you're striving to? So he says, me striving to Malchus, like no end. I'm chalishing for it, from Malchus to Ein Sof. I'll do anything for that. This was his life was just for that. So you do it once when the Rebbe was davening. And so you do it that a lot of times he went into spilus, and sometimes he even fell on the floor middle of davening, he rolled a little bit. And so the Tzemach Tzedek, his grandson, once said that he heard that the Rebbe was saying that in his spilus he was saying that ich will nicht ein Gan Eden. Ich will nicht ein Elam habe, ich will nur dich allein. That's all he wanted. The Eibishter, he wanted the Atzmus himself, Everyone said about, Atzmus, that all you think that, we're looking for, the Atzmus of the Eibishter itself. So when you go over to a Yid, it's one of the things the Baal Shem Tov, that instituted, that we see another Yid, you should ask somebody, if he feels still, right? I remember once you can hear there's a recording of a Yechidus of the Alexander Rebbe, and he comes into Yechidus and he asks the Rebbe, "Was machst du?" So the Rebbe said, "Mach nur der Eibishter." Stop. It was very warm conversation, but that piece, that piece. It could be. I remember hearing it a long time ago, before they had digital, But so he said that Hashem instituted this in you. He said, you should say, if he feels to, was CHUTZA, he said, one of the inyanim is that you want to get that the other person should say, thank the Mevishtin, like the Mevishtin, right? The Indian that you recognize, outcome to the Mevishtin, that alone is touching into the Atzmas Alayim. There's no chachmas around it, But thank the Mevishtin, that's it, That the Indian is, the unchap and get to the etzem of it. And this is this Indian chap etzem. I want to share with you a maisa that happened about a story. It's a Toronto story. I don't know. You Torontonian all your life? No. Okay. But when I came to Toronto, 22 years ago. 2000. Y2K. January 1st was Shabbos, and I came on Matzah Shabbos. Anyways, so I learned right away that in downtown Toronto, there's 3 Orthodox shuls that are still alive. And actually, Baruch Hashem, all 3 are still there today. And the Minsker, the Kiever, and on Markham Street.
Here's it for Sunday.
Who?
Here's it for Sunday.
Shlomo Langer.
Today. Oh, yeah.
You died, I think, yeah. But I this was a story that happened that would happen with him. It was involved with this. So I didn't know Bichlal, the city. I didn't know anybody here. I just like landed off the boat basically, and I was staying in a hotel. And I figured 3 shuls. Shabbos, I'll go Friday night to 1 shul. Shabbos morning Nacha shul, and the Mincha Nacha shul. During the week I want to go to a mikveh. So I came up to the shul. Anyway, so I went. So I went Friday night to the Minsk shul, and Shabbos morning the Kiva only had a minyan then the Shabbos morning. I was the only guy there with black hair, and any hair, yeah. I can't say that today, but then it was like that. Anyways, and then for Mincha Shabbos, I went to the Russisch shul, Markham Street shul, whatever. Anyways, and I came in there and they had Shalosh Shudas there. So by Shalosh Shudas, I figured I'd say a little bit or something, But by the Shalosh Shudas, everybody was pushing food, I should wash, I should eat, And it's okay. Ufgehad wird geworden, that in Lubavitch, that Shalosh Shudas, we don't wash for Shalosh Shudas. A whole long sikha from the Rebbe, a whole pilpul, al pinigla, a whole thing of what you do eat, you don't eat. Very interesting, very interesting sikha. Anyway, so then the nekuda is that the Shalosh Shudas time, the we besides eating mezainis and some peiros, the main thing is to learn Torah. Anyways, so somebody was getting a little agitated there by this Shalosh Shudas. So this guy, this Shlomo Langer, he gets up and he says, "You guys, everybody at the table, you have no idea what Lubavitch is. If the guy doesn't want to eat, don't bother him. Let me tell you guys what Lubavitch is." This was my, what do they call it? My opening. So he says, "I'll tell you my." The guy stands up and he says that in Tafshin Yud, after Yud Shvat was on Shabbos. Tafshin Yud and Friedrich Rebbe's Stalkus in 1950. And Sunday morning in the newspapers, Toronto all over, it said the highlight of the newspapers with the headlines was that Friedrich Rebbe passed away. So he knew that his father was the Sresnitzer Rebbe's Azun, and he knew his father would always talk about the Lubavitch. I don't always, but he would mention about it. So he bought the newspaper for a few pennies and he brought it home to his father. He was on the way home from shul. He saw it. He brought it home to his father. So his father looked at the paper, and his father said, Mr. Silber, he's going to die now. Imagine this kid, he was 10, 15 years old. He thinks his father fell off the moon. this Mr. Silver is going to die. Who's Mr. Silver? What's dying what does that have to do with this? So he asked his father, what's the pshat? So his father told him, he said, like maybe it was, I think he said Tufshin Bays, maybe 1942. He said this guy, Mr. Silver, was in the hospital here in Toronto, and he was mamish. He was on the way out. He was mamish sick. He wasn't moving. He was unconscious, and the family was going. Mr. didn't know what to do, so they went to this guy. Nothing was helping. No doctors, no medical help. So the wife came to this Linger's father, and he told him, he said, listen, what could you do? Your father's that's the Rebbe. Maybe you could give us a bracha or something. He said, listen, he says, I can't give you any bracha. But he said, I'll tell you this. He said, not too long ago, in New York, the Lubavitcher Rebbe moved to America. He's in New York. And if you want, I'll try to get a hold there, and I'll try to get a bracha for you. So she said, of course, 100%, we need a bracha. So he called to 770, and somebody answered the phone. And the person took a number and said, we'll call you back. He came back, and he said like this. He said that the Rebbe, the Rebbe said that recently a new yeshiva opened up in Montreal. He said that, told the family that since it says, we say by Tashlach, since we say that Einei Doime Malach Echad le Elef Malachim, so this, you can't compare. So if the family will make a commitment and they'll give $1,000 to the new yeshiva in Montreal, this will be a Toizen Balachim will come out, and this will be a bracha for them. Right? Yeah. Right. Yeah, I was thinking about that. What the $100,000? A few times that and stuff. I was reading once that in 1940 they bought the building of 770 for I think $15,000. So make a cheshbon, $1,000. It's a nice penny. Anyways, so Langer gives over the regards to the wife. It says this is the story. So she says, okay, there's no choice. We're doing this. But her husband's brother was the shutef in the business. So she comes to him and she tells him the story, and he says, are you Meshuggah? He felt, well, doesn't have what to do. We're not doing it. And she was decided, it's my husband. I'm doing it. She got into a car with her son, and they drove to Montreal, and they dropped off the money. Later, I'll come back to this piece of the story, but later, I found a letter in the Friedrich Rebbe's Igros Kodesh to Mrs. Silber, and he writes to her that, thank you for letting me know that you sent the money to the yeshiva, but more importantly is the way you did it, that you had your son go with you to deliver it like yourself. Not to stop shik shliach, This was like the Friedrich Rebbe was, taken by it, that they did it. And then he told her, this is printed stories. So then he tells her that now that you did this, I want to share with you a Maisa. And the Friedrich Rebbe writes her a story. He says that in Lubavitch, when his father was the Rebbe Rashab, so a guy came and asked for a bracha that he should have enough money to be able to marry off his child. So my father, the Rebbe Rashab, told him that he should make a commitment to give money to tzedakah, and this will open up tzedakah, and they'll have plenty of money to do it. And then my father, he says, the Rebbe Rashab told this guy that there's two ways how you can decide to do it. You can make the achlata, and then the Eibusher is going to give you the bracha based on your achlata, and then you're going to owe the Eibusher. You'll be a Baal Chayv to the Eibusher to give the tzedakah that you made the achlata in your head. That's one way. So the other way is that you could go right away and give the tzedakah, and the Eibishter will be a Baal Chayv to you, because you already did your part. And my father told him that it's much better to do it that way. You do it right away and let the Eibishter be a Baal Chayv to you. So he tells this lady, Mrs. Silver, she says to her that now that you did it, the Eibishter is now a Baal Chayv to you, and keep me posted with the good news. Yeah, Mama, that's like that. And so Langer's father, back to this. So Langer's father tells the son, this is Yitzhak, tells him that the brother-in-law didn't want to give the money. And within a few weeks, the husband started to open his eyes, started to talk, he started getting back to himself until eventually he was not able to leave the hospital. And the brother got sick that year and Taka didn't make it. Very, Mabel de Kazakh. So Langer's telling his son that now that it's, the Fiedler passed away, so now I know that Mr. Silver, that's Mustama the end for him. So he's saying the story at the Shalosh Shudas, I'm listening there, I went home, I was thinking about the story, Santa Maisa, then he Taka finished with the Olam. He tells them Taka that Mr. Silver Taka died that year, Tashun Yud. Taka. He lived 8 more years, whatever it was, since that bracha. But anyways, that Sunday morning, I was sitting in my little apartment. I moved from the hotel to a small apartment on Bedford Road. And I had a kvias that every day, different things that a person learns. And one of the things that I was learning was every day I would read 10 pages of Igris Kodesh, of letters that they printed, of the Rebbe's letters that he wrote to people. And I was holding page Yud Aleph. It was Tashon Chav Gimel, the year of Tashon Chav Gimel letters. I want to say by heart that it's Chelak Chav Aleph, whatever, but Tashon Chav Gimel letters, I was holding the 11th page. I must have done the first 10 pages probably Shabbos morning. And Sunday morning I open up, and on that page, the 11th, I'm starting on my next 10 pages. And the letter is addressed to Meiri V'Harav Reb, Shin Langer. I look on the bottom, and I think it was Shloima. I think that was his father's name. This one was Shalom's, his father was Shloima, yeah? The letter's written to Shloima. Shloima Langer. This is crazy. It's Shabbos, Sunday morning. And the Rebbe says to him like this. You wrote to me this whole letter, and you wrote to me the story of what happened in Toronto. And on the bottom of the letter, they write there the whole story that I just told you, that this Langer said. The whole story, exactly what everything I just told you. And then over there, it's Messiah to the Fidik, everything, because that's how I saw the letter to the missus. It was printed later. Anyway, so the Rebbe says to him, to Shlomo Langer, thank you for telling me the story. Kanida, that Langer and Tashon Chav Gimel decided, you know what, it's a nice story about the Fidik Rebbe, and he wrote it up and he sent it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe would appreciate a nice story. The Rebbe writes, thank you for telling me the story, but you should know that a bracha from a tzaddik is an inyan nitzchi. So a mele, you can't make any connection. What happened? The guy passed away that year, Tashon Yud, whatever. But a bracha from a tzaddik is an inyan nitzchi. It's not our place, to who's teaching, what this means and what's the pshat. Okay, thank you for this. A bracha is an inyan nitzchi. This is, when it. Shalom Aleichem. So it comes, it's Yutes Chav Kislev, and remember you hear a word, you hear a story, it's something it's a kich it's a kratzacharein, in cup, and anything we hear, anything from any tzaddik, anything, when we learn Gemara, you learn whatever you learn, anything, these are in Yanim, those are in Nitzchim. And it has the brachas, and it has everything with it. L'chaim. Those that didn't say l'chaim yet, let's, You do at the niggin, there's a special niggin for Yutas Kislev that the Alter Rebbe writes in a letter that it was that the Geula, the notification that he got of the Geula was on Yom Gimel Shochwa Bei Kitayv. Stam at the same kviyas like this year, and he got it. He got the news that he's gonna be going out of jail. B'shas he was reading the pasuk Pada B'Shalom Nafshi, Kapitel Nun Hey until the Pashtus. We know that the Rabbeim used to say every day of Tehillim to the Yom of the Shavua. So Nun Hey is in the Tuesdays to Shir Tehillim. So there's a niggin on these words of Padu Shalom. Let's sing the niggin. Pada B'Shalom Nafshi Mikravli Pada B'Shalom Nafshi Mikravli Kiverami Bayo Nimadi Yishmakel Meyane Meyasef Kedem La Yishmakel Meyane Meyasef Kedem Hashem Kaliba Islama Yashem Kaliba Islama Ibela Yaro Kibela Yaro Elaikim Sholach Lishlai Bam Chilel B'Yisai L'machamay B'Krav Levi Bara Mishem B'Hema Sichai Ashlei Al Hashem Yamechaveh Beit Latzadik Yata Elohim Teiri Dem Lever Shachas Yata Elohim Teiri Dem Lever Shachas Anshe Damim Omima La Yechta Anshe La Yechta Yemei Ani Yevnacham Bani Yevnacham Bani Yevnacham Hey Bani Yevnacham Bani Yevnacham Bani Yevnacham Somebody here. Chaim. Summer. Kain ba Koiches, Chaim, not just for somebody that's speaking, but in order to hear also, Chaim. Sitting here at the, in this side of the world, while we talk about, the Balagula, the Yemagula, and everything that happened on a whole different side of the world, in a place of Russia, Lithuania, and all the history that's involved with there. And you think about it and you wonder how amazing it is that these, big, massive countries that were the strongest countries of the world at the time, and, the pile, what's left of them, it's fragmented, the whole Russia's in different parts, there's Ukraine, there's everything's, separate, and how strong is it, that in many different levels. And I'm thinking, Yutis Kislev, I spoke to a friend of mine, a chaver from yeshiva, that that he didn't even marry, he's a California boy, he didn't even not marry a Russian girl, and he moved to a place in Ukraine called Sumy, Ukraine. It's easy to remember the name, Sumy, but it's Sumy, Ukraine. It's mamish, it's Ekvelt, mamish Ekvelt, a place in Ukraine, So I asked him, amongst you and the other shluchim, that everybody that you're in touch with, like how many Fabrengens would you think there is, Yutas Kislev in that side of the world, let's say Russia, Ukraine together. He said to me, easily a couple of hundred Fabrengens are going on. So imagine that, a place that there was so much redifus to Yiddishkeit on so many different levels, that today that the Yiddishkeit, so, I asked him, what is it over there, in Russia, to have Yidden in Ukraine, the Yidden that are taka today, there's a lot of Yidden that are coming and they're very involved. I'll tell you, in I had my family was Russian on my father's side, and God in Tafshin Nun, 1990. So it's like a second cousin, a girl, brought up very, secular over the years through communism. Her parents, they weren't really into their Yiddishkeit, and she ends up getting engaged to a guy. And my grandmother was very, hurt by this, naturally, so she flew her to America, come here. She figured, come here for a few weeks and we'll show her, educate her. Basically, she should see what it's about. You can't just walk away from it. So they, Yom Tov, come around, wherever you want. So brought her to America, and they brought her to this, mashpia, this Rosh Hashiva, and everybody tried to speak to her, but nothing changed. She wasn't gonna budge. And then my grandmother decided that she's gonna bring her to the Rebbe before she leaves, And a Russian lady speaks like with the whole stoltz, My grandmother, she tells the Rebbe in Russian, that my cousin right here, she's planning to marry a guy. She's going back to Russia, I don't know, the next day or two. And, we tried to explain everything gone, nothing's worked. And the Rebbe looks at her and tells her that it's a very bad thing to do for yourself and for the boy. And you should do everything in your power to break this up, because if you really care for him, you wouldn't do it either. And Mamash, in like maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, gives it to her very strong. And you could see, it's all in Russian, but you could see how she like drops her head, what's she gonna answer, And she leaves, and she goes back to Russia, and Shtaka gets married to the guy. And within 6 months or so, it's pretty long after to have your first fight, 6 months. And he calls her, a dirty Jew or something along those lines, and she was very insulted by that. And she started thinking about, her trip to America, that you call me that. This is not the case. You don't know what you're saying. And Taka, she broke up, and then she decided, she was living in St. Petersburg, Leningrad, and she called the local rabbi, who was the shliach, Rabbi Pesner, and she said, I want to learn more. She got divorced, and she said, I want to learn more about my Yiddishkeit. Who am I? What am I? Not just my family, but tell me. And she started to learn, and she became mamish total, a full Balter, and she married Taka, a firm boy, and she lives there, and she helps out the shluchim there. And I'm saying this because I was asking my friend, so many Yidden there that are coming to see Shivas now, and it's Balter. I said, what is it that, that takes the Yidden there? So he told me, he said, there's two Maimon Chazals. One says that Ani loini vresi elo l'shamash eskaini. That's it. I wasn't born for anything, only to serve the Eibishter. There's another Maimon Chazal that says Ani nivresi l'shamash eskein. So one says, I need loy nivresi el l'shamash eskein. One says, I need nivresi l'shamash eskein. He said that's the whole difference what he sees of the Jews living out there and everywhere else. He says over there, the Yidden that are there, they live ani nivresi l'shamash eskein. There's no, I'm living it up. I'm living good life. My Gashmis is good. Now let me see how I could, serve the. I need loy nivresi el. Okay, only the shamash eskein. That's all they see. They see that what's life after all this that what went on in those countries and what's there. They see it only this, and this is ani nivresi the shamash eskein. There's no chachmas. There's no beating around it. This is it. So we were talking about different Yid and different kind of things. I was telling him that when I moved to Toronto, I made a friend with a Jewish couple on my block. I teach the kids a little bit of Torah. Who's this guy? This guy's a Torah neshama guy, but very hard to get him to do any Torah mitzvahs. But what's crazy is this guy's mamash. He's a grandson of a very famous Rebbe who used to be in Toronto, Rabbi Price. All the shalom, special Yid, big London Agoyin, and one time I remember the first time when I met his grandson, and I asked him to put on tefillin. We put on tefillin. Mamash, you were able to see, his eyes, not mamash crying, but you could see he was very emotional, Very, very, very warm. But to get anything, and he sees his kids. He complains to me how his kids has a hard time to get them in. I tell him, listen, if you don't, you gotta water it. You gotta live it a little bit. It's very, very unique, different kinds of, nisanis. Everyone said. I remember when I was a bacher, I was listening to this, to the Sikha. The Rebbe said that the Frierdiker Rebbe lived 10 years. He was the Rebbe in Russia, basically from 1920 till pretty much till 1930. From 1930 to 1940 was in Poland, more or less. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Geretzwegen, the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he said from 1940 to 1950 was in America. He said, what was the challenges in each place, the 10 years? So he said in Russia, the big challenges were the government. The government wasn't allowing the Yiddishkeit. They were the communists. They made it very difficult. They put him into jail. They almost killed him. You know the story. Russia was the government was the main problem. Yeah, they had support from some all different kinds of groups. Mainly the government was the big obstacle. Said in Poland, he became very close friends with all the Polish Yidden and the Frubba Yidden. But to get chassidus in there, that was the avodah there. Get chassidus, with the Polish Yidden. So when he came to America, that was the biggest challenge, to bring Yiddishkeit into a place as a cult to Yiddishkeit. That was already you're fighting against a whole different. It's a whole different. Mahus, it's not a simple task, right? You can't. I remember when we were maybe 15 years old. So there was we had a teacher, and he told us that that year that there was 40 years of the Rebbe's Messias from 1950 to 1990. So he said that it's time that we make a achlata in Nigla and Chassidus. So because the Alter Rebbe's Inyan was Nigla and Chassidus, he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, right? The Shulchan Aruch Harab, and he wrote the Tanya for Pnimis HaTorah. And we know that the Alter Rebbe to write, because his name is Shneur, it's two lights. He should write something in the Kav of Nigla and in Pnimis HaTorah, the Nigla of Pnimis HaTorah. So this Malamed told him a bunch of, I think we're 15, maybe 16. And he said, we'll make a achlata in both areas, and you should to learn 40 dafim of Gemara about that, 40 years, and to do 12 prakim of Tanya about that. So we know that when the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, so besides for the Havana that's in the Tanya, there's also the Isis Kedusha that's in it. It's Matar the Mayach, and there are many different inyanim there. You know, when the Tanya was printed, so there was the Rebbe has two haskamas in the front, besides from his three sons. Also, there's two other haskamas there. In English, the approbations, whatever that means, haskama. Yeah. So the Alter Rebbe he wanted to get the haskama because there was a lot of opposition of people that didn't understand really what's the chassidus. So he sent a chassid. He told them to go to a certain city, and he told them in this city you're gonna see there's a place where they have shows. He says go over there, and you're gonna find that you're gonna find the right person, and he's gonna write the haskama. So he went there to this place, and he went to this place where there's a show, and who's there? He doesn't see anybody that's fitting for this, So what's the chassid supposed to do by a show? He's interested in the show. So he sits there, falls asleep, whatever he was at a sefer with him, I don't know. And when everything was over, everybody leaves. And there's one guy standing there, he's sweeping up the hall. So he figures, he sees one person, he says, this must be the guy. So he comes to him and he says, I see you're the janitor here, you're cleaning up, but he says, I'm sure that this is not really just who you are, a simple janitor. And he tells him the story. He tells him that the Rebbe told me I should come here and I bring you this sefer, and he wants you to learn it, and he wants your opinion on it, right? And this was the Yehuda Leib HaKohen, Taka, who wrote one of the two haskamas there. And when he writes it there, very interesting. There's a bunch of little things that you see there, but he signs it over there. And instead of writing the year of when he signs it, he writes there Shnas Pidusenu, which has the gematria of the year of Tavkuf Nun Vav, But the chassidim always said, what did he write it like such a eifid, such a hidden word there? So they said because when a person learns the Tanya, so you just by learning the Isis, it brings a Pidusenu to you. It could be pada, it could take you out of all the tzaras that you have. It literally lift you up and take you out. And through learning the Tanya, this is also the bracha that will bring us in Mirz Hashem, Be'ezus Hashem, Eben Yirtz Hashem, Zicher, Be'ezus Hashem. Once a bacher came there, we gave him a bracha to learn Torah, Basmadu Shkida. So he said, Mirz Hashem, he said, the Eivish Zicher bill. It's in your hands, So he said, when you learn the Tanya, it's makes this Peduseinu, So anyway, so there was this koch to learn to do this 12 prak. Anyways, it came taka to Yud Shvat, and it was our Boim Shana of the Nesius. There was big ilums there, and there was 10 bachrim, young bishers, 15, 16-year-olds that did these learnings, Balter. And we came by, and we were sure that the Rebbe was going to pat us on the shoulder, and it's going to make you feel really good. You worked so hard for 3 months, 4 months straight. I think it was from Chayel to Yud Shvat. That was and we walked by, and the Rebbe gave each one of us, instead of $1, he gave us $2. And he said, Atzlacha Rabbi, gave each one. And we left and realized, it's very nice what you did, but there's a lot more to do. Don't get so comfortable with it. There's a lot more to do, in Tanya, in the parak, I think it's Chavtes. So the Rebbe brings her the mashal that when a person, you daven and you learn that you don't feel that you're on fire. It's a schleppzach another day, and you're schlepping the shul. Another day, you're fighting again with the Yitzhara, and another day. He says there that from the Zayah that he says, the loisalik bein ahered in ishmasim mevachshele. Says if you take, let's say, a piece of wood, take a log, and the fire's not catching on, so you got to beat it. You got to soften it up. That it should be a keli to be able to. So it says the same thing. Sometimes in Avodas Hashem, sometimes you have to break yourself. You have to, put yourself in place and realize. Don't you walk around, with too much gaiva and this. There's no room to realize that you have to grow. Sometimes a brechen abyssal. Abyssal apach, abyssal something, So the Rebbe had his ways of doing it. He didn't want you to feel down, but, I give you a bracha, but, you gotta you got to continue going. Recently they just published in New York, so they published a new volume of letters that the Rebbe wrote to people. Chelik Lamed Gimel. They're still publishing. They're only holding 1978. There's still many more volumes to come out, let alone they printed English ones, and there's a French 2 volumes of French letters. Anyway, they're holding this maybe almost 20,000 letter or something that they're publishing. All these different letters. Stamas Amayman Muslim to this letter that will tell you. So the people say ever since Gimel Tammuz, people have different ways how that they want to connect to higher places. So a lady tells me in Montreal, Mrs. Marazov, so she tells me I might say like this. She says that after Gimel Tammuz, she says, I couldn't communicate anymore with the Rebbe. It was just an interesting story that what she did. So she said that she was having terrible problems with migraines. So every few weeks, get terrible migraines. This doctor, that doctor, gonna go. So she said, it doesn't make sense. Just because we can't see the Rebbe anymore, does that mean you can't communicate? So she decided to write down on a letter. I don't know, for whatever reason, she was in Montreal. Maybe she couldn't travel I don't know. She decided she's going to take it and she's going to open up one of the Rebbe's books, a Sfarim of the Igris. She's going to put a letter in and see maybe the letter that he writes maybe answers to him. So maybe you heard some people that do that. Anyways, she opens it up. I went to check it up. It's in Chelik Yud Aleph there. And she opens it up and the letter reads like this: in answer to your question, what to do about migraines. Mamash like that. It's a crazy thing. So he says to her that Yidua, that brings down from the Sfarim, that you should carry with you a mezuzah, a kasher mezuzah, and you could put it into a piece of jewelry, like I guess maybe a necklace or something. You could put. But he said it should be a kasher mezuzah, and make sure that it should be kiss, should be in a way that you can carry it to take it with you where you have to go, and this will be a bracha for the migraines. And you should also, I guess, bring it down a little bit in Gashmis, should also take a certain medicine. The letters all in Hebrew, and the name of the medicine is in English. It says you should also take this and this pill, and and I'm just came to mind that story. But so in this new volume, a lady writes. She writes to the Rebbe that she lit her Shabbos candles Friday night, and the candles went out, so she lit it again. And it just says v'chulu. So I don't know, maybe it happened a few times. But it says she lit her Shabbos candles and went out, she had to relight it. And she wants to know what's the pshat in this. Everybody has their things, and people wrote to the Rebbe. They knew they'll get an answer. So the Rebbe writes to her, how do we know what she wrote? Because the Rebbe, most of the letters, he always starts off with minor to what you wrote to me, that you asked me about, and he recaptures the question. That you say that your Shabbos candles went out and you lit it, etc. So he says that everything is bashkacha pratis and everything is something in derech avodas Hashem. He says, since we're living in a world that has so much bilbulim and all kinds of machshavas come into our head, and we're living in a world of a mamash, a big chayshach. So the normal thing that happens when a chayshach happens, it's so dark that you start to give up. There's an Indian of Yush. That's the way the world that we're living in is. After you try a lot, especially something ruchnis and doesn't go, so you start to give up. So what's the eitzah? You have to relight. You have to relight yourself, refocus yourself in your betachin in the Eibishter, in Torah and mitzvahs, and relight it, and that's the oir. So that's it. That's what it means. It went out and restarts again. This is a story of life. That everything, this is the story of life, that the Sahara comes, pulls us down. Our job is to get up on top, right? That's the whole lineage of the, we said before, the Mayach Shalat Alalei, this whole thing that the Mayach wants one thing and knows what you want. right? You learn Shulchan Aruch, you learn Gemara, you learn the Torah. You know what Torah was, but then the heart, it's a glustig zachen, So the heart's filled. But this is the ongoing thing, right? On last week's Chumash, that Rivka says, right, that the kicking in the stomach, says the Alter Rebbe, is that this is it's a hard day to type. Yederena wants to win and be in charge. The Mayach wants to be in charge. The Lev wants to be in charge. It's a hard day to type. It's an ongoing thing. But if we remember that we have the Koyach and we tap into something that's bigger, you can do stichim from them, and you can relight the candle again. L'chaim, we should all be able to continue to relight the candle. L'chaim. Chaim. Ready for a little more? Warmed up. In Canada, you have to be always warm. Yeah.
Balter bist du klar geworden? Verstehe.
the Rebbe used to travel. He did travel, yeah, because we know Mises, where he went to different places. First of all, there was Kufa, where there was Vikuchim. It was like public. Debates, where there's a famous story where the Rebbe Chazed actually by Fabrengen, where now the Rebbe came to remember if it was in which city it was. It was a big vikuach, and it was all set up, in this big shul, and the Alter Rebbe came onto the bima. Was it the text? And there was a packed shul. And the clouds you do it that the Alter Rebbe would speak. He spoke things with the nigun, the tune, and he said. And the only reason why we know the tune is because the Rebbe, when he said the story, he said it with the tune. It's very geschmack to hear how the Rebbe says it, in the same tune. The Rebbe came up and he said, Ta'amuru kitayv havaya versucht wird sein, as der Rebbe is good. That's all he said. Ta'amuru kitayv havaya versucht wird sein, as der Rebbe is good. That tam, taste it. Tam, versucht. Taste it a little bit and you'll see. And he went down. And tens of people followed him, said, I'm coming with you. It was a certain, that even Bechla, when he was in jail, so there a story happened in jail where he didn't even say a song. He smiled. One of the ministers asked Alter Rebbe, that how could he say what he says in Tanya and Perek Aleph? People always ask, why does this have to be in Perek Aleph Tanya? When you teach Yidden, and people that can learn on their own is one thing. When you teach a Yidden, especially if you teach a Freie group of people, and you're teaching, you start with Perek Aleph Tanya, and you teach this thing, it blows the whole thing, it blows up.
I have a friend, she went Bindstag at the Shleach up north. He told me that they had a group of shluchim who teach Tanya, come up with ideas. So then when they came to the end of Perek Aleph, it says Yid and Hadoy. So they were discussing how to teach it. So one shliach said that I decided I'm just gonna say it the way it is, and that's it, and that's it. So and there was this guy that was all afraid of that he's gonna take it as well. So I explain it, and this guy pops up and says, "You're telling me I'm married to her?"
So at the end of Perek Aleph, the Rebbe says, "What's the difference of a Yid and a guy?" And he says that by a Yid you have Nefesh Bahamis, and you have Toiv, and you have Ra. You have both. And you have Klippus Noiga, that you have both, and the root of our neshama, of this neshama that we have, the first neshama that we have comes from Meitzadas. There was Toiv V'Ra. But he says, Mashenkin and the fascists of the Goyim, Ein Behem Toiv Kla. There's no good there. Any good that they have, he quotes from the Gemara that called stuck of a chesed, Sha'isin Umas Ha'ilam, they do it all for themselves, for their own pride, and that's it. So it's a heavy statement, for a guy to hear this. You're saying straight out that Ein Behem Toiv Kla, and anything that they do is all, for their own gaiva and this, So already when Dr. Rebbe was in jail, they questioned him. It was one of the 22 questions that they asked him. So they imagine he's sitting in jail. They're torturing him, putting him in jail, and they're asking him why we are in Behem Toiv Kla. So they Dr. Rebbe geschmeichelt. He smiled to them like, you need me to explain this, And they didn't continue the question. They didn't bother anymore. They got the answer, Ein Behem Toiv Kla, And by the way, in I want to say it was in the late 60s or the early 70s. So in England, the Lubavitchers, they decided to translate the Tanya into English.
Is it okay if I correct that? Was Gershom Mendel in Italian? Gershom Mendel brought the guy in Italian because the English was translated before.
I'll tell you the story the way Zalman Jaffe writes the story.
It's all part of the EU, used to be part of it.
Okay.
In this case, it could be, I don't know who translated, that could be Taka, but they were going to reprint the Tanya. It was going to be the first time that the Tanya would also have English side by side. Like the same page of the Hebrew, you'll have all the English.
What year is it?
I want to say the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere right around there. And they, to have the whole English on one page is not so pashut to fit it in. And so there was a whole discussion. They were going to use Encino Press was going to do it and lay it out. Anyways, but it came up, this shaila, that the Zalman Jaffe was a businessman in Manchester, and he wanted that, why in the English, the end of Perek Aleph, let's stick it somewhere later on in the Tanya, you know. You don't have to have it mamish right in the front, you know, right there, you know. In Hebrew, okay, who reads the Hebrew, you know, but the English, you know, mamish going to put it in the face of everybody's going to see it right away, you know. But he understood he's not going to play around without getting, you know, the Rebbe's stamp for that, you know. So he wrote a letter to the Rebbe saying that, you know, would it be okay if the end of the English for Perek Aleph, you know, we'll put it somewhere in the back of the book, you know.
What was it worried about Balchitas? I mean, most going, it's not made to the time. The time's not made to the going.
He didn't know who knows where the Tanya is, which hands it will fall into, you know. Especially once it's in English, you don't know where it's going to get to, you know. So the Rebbe Taka writes to him. He says, those that have a problem are going to have a problem regardless whether they read that or not. This is not going to change. In other words, this is not giving them ammunition. Those that are haters, you know. And he says, and those that are not, that have a, you know, a positive. So then for them, this is not a chiddush. This not a chiddush. And Mispefrat, he says, the Shaila B'chal is not even on the Rebbe. The Shaila, if you want to ask the Shaila, it's on the Gemara, it's on the Zohar, it's other places out there. Rebbe's quoting Sachako from these places, but regardless of it, it's a fact. And then the Rebbe says, we only just came from, we're a generation continuing already what just happened in Europe. When the whole world knows, he writes this to him in the letter. He said, like, the whole world knows what happened to the Yidden, and either the nations around, either were Messiah, right? They helped the tragedies. If they were able to help, they helped. If not, they stood on the side. But if they were able to help, they would have helped. So doesn't even make sense to take it out or to put it somewhere else? Like, this is, you know, the MS.
Sorry, I was talking about something else.
It's okay. You're not the first guy to interrupt me.
I want to tell you.
Okay.
When Gershom Mendel wanted to translate it to Italian, so the Rebbe insisted that the Dafka hired a certain guy. Because I guess Mitzad Ina from the Rebbe, whatever it is, that he should translate it Tanya to Italian. And when he finished, Gershom Mendel brought him to the Rebbe. So what would a guy ask the Rebbe after translating the Tanya? And the Perek Aleph. How come it says it? So the Rebbe told him, the Alter Rebbe was talking about the Goyim of those days. And then when the guy left and Gershom Mendel stayed there, the Rebbe told him, "Ich hab gemeint that today they are much worse."
Listen, the main thing is the stolz. I mean, the Rebbe had all the stolz to stay there and to, you know, to stand for the principles or whatever the Torah is. That's Nechemia, what the Torah says. Even in everything, in the quotes from the Gemaras and the Midrashim, this is what Torah says. That's it. You're on safe ground. When you have to know, you know, how to say it or how to present it, but not that you try to hide the emes. We're not here to hide the emes. If this is what's emes, this is what's emes. You know, you have to know how to speak to somebody, but you don't have to. It's not about, you know, the hiding of it. And we see this mamish, everybody in everything that you learn and who you learn with, especially, you know, if you're learning with people that are very new to it. I remember once a Yid came to us in the Beis Chabad, and I couldn't figure out how to get him, like, excited and to learn, to learn. I tried this, that. We learned from Gemara, from my English one, and even Chassidus, And he told me that he was a musician, and he used to play, he said reggae music, whatever. He was very big. He made CDs, whatever. And so I figured, you know what? If he has a chush with music, let me get the musical notes for Kriyas HaTorah. I taught him how to read Pashut Aleph Beis, and I taught him how the trup, and he started playing in his house with his piano and his electric guitar. He would sit at home and mamash, and he was so motivated. I'm telling you, I'm not going to tell you his name, but you'd see him today, Pashut Davins in the Shifshul, and he goes to some koiles there and he learns. It got as a stacking cup. He doesn't even want to work anymore. He just wants to go. He told me, learning in koil all day. You eat cake and coffee. He says, I learned Torah, mamish. But he told me one day he goes today with a black hat. It doesn't come down to us anymore. He lives more, closer to Lauren. So he tells me that one day he was flying to China. This is a place 10, 15 years ago, when he was just starting to get into the Kriya. He tells me he was flying to China. He was doing electronics, whatever. And he says, I'm on the plane and I'm practicing, he's practicing his Kriya. And then he says, there's a few frum people on the plane. They're looking at me like I fell off the roof. So I could feel it, that they're looking like I'm pushing crazy. And he says, I'm not like singing loud. He's a guy and he's really laning, but till he realized that he was laning, he wasn't wearing a yarmulke. So these Frumayid are sitting on the plane and they're seeing this guy is practicing his Kriya. He was getting more from him. It didn't, but as soon as he realized that, he made achlates and wear a yarmulke and never take it off. Mamish, it was the look from these people. You don't know. You're looking at a guy, and these people probably also didn't want to hurt his feeling or anything. I don't know if they didn't say anything, but he was so taken by it. He made achlata mamish, and he Pasha today is from the two of his three kids married, from girls. They have Pasha beautiful families. One lives in Israel. He's shtickle or reshakel a little bit with somebody else. Mamish, it's mamish amazing that. You don't know, the Torah gets into a person, but the main thing is, I think, is that's Hashem. You learn the Torah, whatever it is. If this is Torah's emes, then it's Torah's emes. There's no jokes about it. This is, what it is. Of course, there's different levels, and as we become more, more able and we grow, we're always growing. Okay, sure, right? The story by the meal like this by the Alter Rebbe's house. The story with the Mordechai Daker, one of the Talmidim from the Magid. He was coming once to the Alter Rebbe's house, big tzaddik. So in the house, such a chashuv guest coming for a meal, So they prepared the house, for a proper fancy meal, and it was a big shaila, who's going to have the schus, to splurge on the salt and put it into the soup. And the Alter Rebbe's Rebbetzin says, such archim, I'm going to go into the kitchen and I'm going to put some salt. And it was that day, the Alter Rebbe's daughter, she said, I want to have the schus to put the salt in. So she went into the kitchen and she put salt into the soup. Then the cook, the woman who was in charge of the kitchen, Bechlal, always, she said, such a guest, everybody's so excited, I have to put more salt in, So she had salt. Nobody knew that the other person put salt in. Anyways, the meal started, and they brought the soup out. And Balter Rebbe takes the soup, makes a bracha, eats one spoon, and spoon, finishes the whole soup. And Mordechai Daker is sitting on the other side of the table, and he takes one bite, he can't eat it. So he says to him, how does this work here? So Alter Rebbe tells him, why did you eat? No, he says, I can't. It just wasn't edible. So he says to Alter Rebbe, he says, how do you eat it? Alter Rebbe told him that since the days when I came to Mezrich, he said, I trained my body not to eat anything that it wants, only to eat what my body needs. So if it needs it, you can eat it. If it doesn't need it, you won't eat it. It's not about the type of that's in it. If you need, yeah, of course, this is a very high, Balmadreger. But the truth is, like I heard the story. At first, I read the story because the previous Rebbe said the story. But later, I saw that the Rebbe chazes it by Fabrengen, and the Rebbe adds that why was it passed down to us? The story, like what's negea to us? Simple. The Rebbe always took himself he's like part of us, like our generation, compared to the times out there. He says, but if the story came down to us, there must be a reason. But this is a dargah for the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe says that the fact that the story came to us, it means that epis vas, we could reach to some level. At least it could bother us. Epis something, I always use for mashal. Yeah, you teach, especially if it's Friday, people always asking this Indian of Mayach Shalat Alalei, what's the pshat? How do you reach it? I tell people always, by me in the community, everybody's into diets. Everybody's into diets. Nobody loses weight, but they're into diets. They read all the books, they go to the courses, and everybody's into diet. I say, when you go and you learn about a diet, and you heard about it, but if it doesn't become one with you, whatever you're learning, then what does what the subject you're learning have to do with Payal Machmish? It's nothing to do. It's two separate worlds. Because if there's Chachma and there's Bina, so you understand it, you may have a Geshmak. But if there's no Das, there's no Kesher with it. Like the Rebbe says, it's Dimyoin Shav. It's imaginary ideas, but if it didn't connect to you, if it's not one with you, then it's not going to have a pull on the Meshachas. If the mamash live it, feel it, and connect to it, and then it will have an automatic effect, and the mayach will pile on the lave in whatever it is, whatever subject it is. Doesn't matter, mamash what it is, If you do the ma'isa from Yekasiel Lepler, chassid from Balter, he lived in Mdtown. I think he was probably the only chassid that we know that lived in the time, I think, of 5 Rebbeim.
Peretz Chaim, son of Fidik Rebbe, also. The Alter Rebbe and the Fidik Rebbe.
Alter Rebbe.
He was a chassid of Alter Rebbe, and when the Fidik Rebbe was a baby, he saw the Fidik Rebbe. Peretz Chaim. Okay. But besides, it's second place, probably.
I don't know, whatever. It could be. Never really looked into that, but the Kislev Lepper was it's a well-known chassidish, it's a special chassid. The Mdtown Rebbe, the Rebbe's son, the Mdtown Rebbe, he wrote Sfarim, certain Sfarim for the Mdtown Rebbe were written for different chassidim. That was the Mdtown Rebbe did that. He wrote, if this chassid needed a special kavan aveda, he wrote a whole sefer. Kislev Lepper, he wrote a whole sefer, very deep stuff, Imre Bina. So very, very deep stuff. I don't know anybody today that learned Imre Bina, that knows Imre Bina. It's Tifa and Yanim and Chassidus. Anyway, so he was a special chassid, and he was also in the business. He was I think in the lumber business. Because you do it that when he wrote all his cheshbonos from his business, how much lumber came out. So at the end of his whole list, the total, he wrote Ein Oid Milvada. There's nothing that's here besides the Eibusher. Because ultimately that was the bottom line. What's the bottom line? That by numbers like this, the numbers like that. I remember once hearing there was a guy who had troubles in Parnassa, and he came to the Rebbe's house, and when the Rebbe came out of his house going into the car, he stopped the Rebbe. The Rebbe told him, he was a very wealthy guy. The Rebbe said to him, he was trying to calm him down, He said, so what's going to happen if there's 1 0 less at the end of the line? If it's a billion this or that, 1 0 less, we get so caught up that sometimes we can't live. So this That's it. There's what's negay at the end of the day. We see people every day like this, and to be able to find the time, to be able to, the headspace, Pasha, to be able to learn a Kviyas Itim L'Torah. They once came to the Alter Rebbe, and people in the days, before Yutis Kislev, they were arguing, different yanim. So once came, they asked Alter Rebbe, what's unique, about your chassidim? They weren't challenged. So Alter Rebbe said that by me, I see that the chassidim here, that by them they have a Kviyas Itim L'Torah. So they said, well, by you have a Kviyas Itim? You think in our community the Yidden don't have a Kviyas Itim L'Torah? So he said that over here I see that they have a Kviyas Itim L'Torah b'nishmasam. He said that it's not just that they learn an hour or whatever the Kviyas Itim is and they're done. They close the book. I'm finished. I finished my share. The whole day they walk around with that Indian that they learn. It's not the pshat that it's an Indian, of a bragging or something. Hashem. The Indian it's a question that each person asks himself. In the afternoon, could you remember what you learned in the morning? Right? Do you remember what you learned? Like the Rebbe everyone said. He said, I desire that when two people meet each other in the street, they should be talking about Yichud Eloh, Yichud Tzah. What's the pshat? The middle of business, you're in the marketplace, and that's what you're talking about? So yeah, because if you're walking around, living, breathing, thinking what you learned in the morning, then it's with you the whole day. Right? Of course, every Frum Yid learns every day and has a Kviyas Itim L'Torah, before davening, after davening, whatever, whichever opinion. The point is it a Kviyas Itim and Ishmasam, or is it just you do your thing, you close the safe, and you go weiter? Right? So this is when it comes to this Kislev and the Shana Pnimis Atayr, Shana L'Chassidus. That's the way the Rebbe Rashab put it. The Frierdiker Rebbe adds Al Shana Tova B'Darkei Chassidus, B'Limud Chassidus, B'Darkei Chassidus. These are they're serious things. They didn't just joke around. They're serious things, meaning that it's a time to think about, where's my connection? How deep am I? How connected am I? Is it, in a pnimius or just a chassidistic thing? When it's a pnimius, then it carries with you and you're with it the whole day. You live with it, you breathe it. When a person sees you in the street, they could say, here's a walking Yid. And this helps us every day. And l'chaim, we should be able to celebrate and take it with us and be mamshech l'chaim.
Excuse me.
It's a niggin from the Alter Rebbe that we don't sing it only at special times. The niggin. Under the chuppah we sing it a lot, but also special times. The Albala. Yeah. All right. Can't go wrong. Chaim. First, you have to say a little bit of Chaim. and then it will all come together. Vel thinks that if you have l'chaim, then you can't understand things. But it's really faked. If you have the proper little bit, it opens up.
How do you understand Pshat?
I'll tell you this. We mentioned before that about the chassid, the Shmuel Munkes, right? That the Rebbe came, asked him what he thinks. Should I go with the guards? Obviously we understand the simple meaning that a tzaddik is Geizer Kadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim. So if the Rebbe would decide not to go, then that will be. But that's the whole thing. A tzaddik knows that he wants to do only what the Eibishter wants, so he's not going to mix into the plan if it's But the truth is that this Shmuel Munkes, how did he become a chassid? Where did it begin from? So the story goes that the first time he came to the Liazna, and maybe Dr. Rebbe was living in Liadi, then it doesn't matter to us really where exactly the place was. He came to the city and he wanted to meet Dr. Rebbe. The time he arrived, everything was late. And the time he arrived, it was already deep in the middle of the night. His Uber, dropped him off. And where do you go from here? So he figured, I'm going to look for the house with the light on. The house with the light on. That's going to be the Alter Rebbe's house. Who else is going to learn in the middle of the night? That'll be it. So he walks around town and Taka finds the one house with the light on, and he knocks on the door. Lo and behold, who answers the door? Alter Rebbe. So he says, what's the matter? How can I help you? He says, I want to come into your house. He says, what? There's no other house that you could go to? So he says, yeah, but I want to go to your house. So he says, your light was on, and that's where I want to go. So he says, what, you can't find another place to go? So he says, no. So David says, go look for another place to go. So he says, no, I want to go here. So David tells him that, please, goodbye. Go find another place to go. And if not, I'm going to call my guy, and he's going to send you out of here. In Russia, everybody had a Ivan. Everybody had an Ivan guy. Ivan, I'll call my Ivan, my guy, and he'll send you fine. Yeah, my Shabbos guy, exactly. So he says to the Alter Rebbe, he says, you're going to bring your guy? He says, my guy is a lot bigger than your guy. So the Alter Rebbe says, in that case, you could come in. And people always wonder, what's the dialogue here exactly? What's happening? He wants to come. He sees the light on. He says, "No, go." A lot of times, the shot is obviously it's a deep story. This is talking about big people. It's not talking about simple folk people. It's talking about tzaddikim here, people that really, really, were yearning for the real truth. So he comes and he says, "I want to come. I see the light on." The Rebbe says, "What, you need this light? Maybe you're not ready for this light. Maybe there's another light down the block. There's not somewhere else." He wants to see, is the guy, how sincere is he, right? So the Rebbe says, "I can bring you some darkness, my cheshech, that I have here stored away. We'll take care of you." And he says, "No. He says, please, says my cheshech, my darkness, my guy." The guy Asher B'kirbacha, he says, my guy is so big. He says, please. He says, it's bigger than your guy. When he opens up like that, the Rebbe says, you know what? Now you're a keli. Now you're ready. Now you're ready to accept. The acceptance, to be able to accept. This is already a big thing. A big thing to be able to be keli for. when Shulmukas comes and says, people didn't know, people thought, he was the Joker. He was the famous guy that they found him hanging on the fence of the Alter Rebbe's house, the courtyard, the one or by the shul, I don't know where it was. They found him holding onto the gate. So they said to him, "Will you hang him?" He said, "Listen." He said, "When you go on the street and you see a shoe store, they have shoes hanging in the window. Suit store has suits hanging. He says, you come to the Alter Rebbe, you should see chassidim hanging." This is the way he saw things. You have to see them all around the place. You need some people. Some people thought him, as a joke. They didn't know this guy, he was a serious person on the inside. Imagine this, that he starts him like this. The Alter Rebbe takes him in, he works on him, but a lot of times a person thinks, they come to the Rebbe and say, please, get rid of my guy. I don't want to have taibis. I don't want to have struggles. I don't want to have a yitzhahara. You do me a favor, please. Can you throw it out? It doesn't work like that. For that we have malachim, right? For us, that's not the way it works. You just take the yitzhahara, you just throw it out. But people don't realize this about the Rebbe. Before he wrote the Tanya, that we know the Tanya. First out, the Rebbe wrote a Tanya for tzaddikim. It was called the Sefer Shel Tzaddikim. Then the Rebbe had a dream that they came from the Yeshiva Shomayla, and they said, "Who'd you write this for?" Who'd you write this for? So Take realized there's no crowd for this. So he took it and they threw it into the fireplace. That was the end of it. And he wrote the Tanya that we know, it's just the Sefer Shel Beinanim. The Beinanim. What's shot the Beinani? Everybody, what's a Beinani? People say, I'm a Beinani. Yeah, I'm a tzaddik. So the Rebbe said, a lot of people that call themselves a tzaddik or call their friend a tzaddik, and your teacher in school, is a tzaddik. He says, what kind of tzaddik? What are you talking about? He says, there's two different things. Slow down. Right in Parak Aleph, he says, slow down. There's two kinds of titles, names you give people. There's a Shem HaMushal, there's a Shem HaTayar. You can borrow the name, or is this your real name? You sit in class, and the teacher asks a question to the class, and the dumbbell in the class, right? The question, right? Chacham, Chacham. Or you borrow the name, Chacham for this kid, right? You help somebody carry their bag. So, wow, it's tzaddik, amazing you carry the bag. You're always a tzaddik. So there's a difference. You're borrowing the name, or this is the etzem. Yeah, so this is what he says. This is the etzem of a yid is to work with your bein, work with your yitzhahara, work with the taivas, and then try to get it. That your taivas should be in good things. We all have taivas. Is the taivas in bad things, or the taivas is in good things? That's the key. There was once a chassid. I once asked his teacher. He said, "Is it okay if I translate my davening, every few words I say, I want to translate it into Yiddish?" Those days, that was his English. He said, "Is it okay?" He said, "Why do you want to translate to Yiddish? What's wrong with the Hebrew?" He said, "I want my Yitzhahara to understand what I'm saying." Instead, he wanted to talk to his Yitzhahara, understand what I'm saying when I talk about Hashem. So that would be okay. Instead, it's how do you connect with it? Is this you, or is this just a borrowed thing? And we say this every day to ourselves. When it comes to this Kislev, it's a time. Rosh Hashanah is a time. Why do we call it Rosh Hashanah? It's a time to dig deep. It's deep inside us. And say to ourselves, where are you holding your life? What are you doing? Where am I? Where's my Yitzhahara? Where's my Yitzhahara? Who been? I'll tell you something. One of my kids once asked me, he said, did you ever, because I tell my kids different things, I was lucky to be brought up in Crown Heights, and since 70 was only a few minute walk. I used to go there all the time. So one of my kids once asked me if I ever felt the Rebbe's his guf kachim. So I told them, I said, one time I remember. So one time that Rebbe came in for, I think it was mincha. I'm pretty sure it was a mincha. And before Shachas and before Mincha, the Rebbe used to, anytime there were kids under bar mitzvah, he would stop, he would put his hand into his kapata pocket, and pull out a bunch of nickels, and he would give each kid a nickel for tzedakah. What was the same? No more nickels. His shamish, Rebbe Groner, would always have a bag and give the Rebbe a bunch of nickels. So it was a lot of kids, Anyway, so one time, I think it was Tashin Mem Vav, 1986 or 87. So I was for sure under bar mitzvah because I got a nickel. So I stood there. I remember exactly where I was standing, and I put out my hand, and he put a nickel into my hand. Then the kid next to me put out his hand, and he put another nickel into that kid's hand. And then he put another nickel between our two hands, and it fell on the floor. So I jumped down, I grabbed the nickel, and got an extra nickel. And then the Rebbe stuck out his hand, wanted it back. The extra nickel. So I took the nickel and I, put it in this yad Koiches. And I remember feeling his hand, like I put it in, And even though I was under my mitzvah, I remember it was like still in me that this was unusual. I knew enough that this was unusual. So I came to school the next day. I don't even know why I was there. Maybe I was punished from school. I don't know what it was, but I somehow was there. But anyway, the next day I came to school and I told my Rebbe, what happened. So he said, I want to tell something to the whole class. And he told the story and he said, I want to tell you something. I don't know how he thought of this like that on the spot, but he said this. It's a mice with the Balter Rebbe, it was Kislev. So he said like this. He said there was a chassid, Isaac Hamler, came once he was a chassid Balter Rebbe, and he was walking outside, like on the sidewalk by the Alter Rebbe's house, and he saw the Alter Rebbe sitting on his porch, learning from an old sefer. And recently, actually, I saw the stories printed in this new sefer that they printed from Rabbi Yael. The dark chassidim, gray sefer. Yeah. Anyway, so the story is there actually. It's printed like a year or two or whatever. Anyways, so the story is there. So he says like this: so the Rabbi Kama was walking by, and the Alter Rebbe was sitting on his porch, learning from a sefer, an old book, and like old books, the pages don't hold well in the bind, and one of the pages fell out, and it fell out of the sefer, and it went off the porch, and it flew under the railing, and it slipped out onto the sidewalk. Rabbi Isaac Hamler was walking by, and he saw it. So he grabbed the page, and he, held it up to the porch, and the Rebbe took it from him, passed it up. So Rabbi Isaac Hamler, for the rest of his life, he used to walk around saying, he said, all my life, all I do is I'm a taker. Every time I have a problem, I go out there, I get a bracha, I get a guidance, a this or that, He said, but finally, I had something that I was able to give him. He felt, So my teacher, imagine this, he was telling me, he said, listen, he said, all your life, that's all you do. You take here, you had a chance, you gave back. But really, what he was telling us was, and I think about it a lot, not just for me personally, but in life, we take from the Eibusher all the time. Every day we ask Hashem for this, we ask Hashem for that, whatever it is, right? Kizun, Parnasa, learning, davening, everything. Are we just taking? Are we looking for ways how to give back? We want to give back. The chachma is in the giving back. That's really what it is how to give to the Eibusher back. Today, in certain circles, people, they do parnasa, and then they say, oh, finally, I made it big, I'm going to give money to the community. What about the money? The money, they want to give when it's easy. The shaila is, what are we giving back? Am I giving some of my sleep? Am I giving some of my time of the day? What am I doing, to give back? That's really the shaila. The shaila is, what am I doing to give back? Not just, to be a taker. Chaim.
Explained the education.
I was hoping that by now you get it, that's the butter. That's it. It's the chlapsi that you come and you take a bissel branfen and you take a bissel l'chaim and you open up yourself and you. Everyone said by Fabrengen that the job of a Fabrengen, not the Fabrenger. Fabrenger is no such a thing of a Fabrenger. That just became like a title, not Fabrenger. Fabrengen means you sit together, you gather together, you talk, and everyone said that by a Fabrengen, it's not about uprising yen and the nose. It's not about to take off that other person's nose. Take off your own nose. It's Fabrengen. We sit together. It's one heart. A guy once wrote to the Rebbe and said that. Said, I have problems with my heart. I'm having problems. His heart failing, this, that. Rebbe said, you know what you're missing in life? You're missing Fabrengen. You go to Fabrengen, you warm up your heart. You won't have these heart problems. That's Fabrengen. You come together, you open up. Say l'chaim. It helps you to open up. You don't just drink. You say, make a l'chaim. Say l'chaim. You give a bracha. That's why l'chaim is lashon rabim, because the gashmish beruchnius is everything. L'chaim. I'll tell you a story. I have to go soon, but I'll just tell you this.
You must remember.
What?
You must remember.
Mendel Aronov. I'll just tell you one Maisa. Then I'll tell you this other Maisa. But then Chago will tell you that. Since I came to Toronto, I always would bring him any mezuzahs stuff. Any mezuzahs fill in, and I have the most craziest scenarios. With the people that I meet. I remember a lady once. I took her mezuzah off. I always open them up right away. If it's an obvious issue, you could tell. You don't need to be a cipher. Open up a mezuzah case. All I see in there is Yivarech Hashem Yishmerach. That's it. Yeah. I open one lady. What? On a cloth. Yeah. Yivarech Hashem Yishmerach. I'm not joking. Yeah. I tell you, I opened once a lady mezuzah at the house, empty mezuzah case. She says, Rabbi, I bought this in Israel. The instructions were in Hebrew. I threw it out. You meet, I'm telling you, when you're dealing with people, I'm telling you, push it the craziest things. This is mamash. I tell you, so every time I bring to Rabbi Aronov, 80% of the time it's possible. Yeah. So, I get it. Okay, I'm relying, on his ruling. What do I know about Saffris? So I said one time, I said, what I said, what's, come on, this tefillah, So he tells me that the cipher that wrote this parsha, he tells me he mixed the Beis Yosef and which one? I don't know. It was two different things. The Ashkenaz and Sfarad were mixed together in the writing. What? So he tells me that says that's why it's possible. I said, come on, you don't have to be so strict, this is, So he goes, he says, Emo for Alamo. Let me just show you already, so you stop bothering me. He didn't have a lot of patience, So he pulls out a matzah Ephraim, and he opens it up. I'm telling you, within a minute, finds the place, black and white there. You mix the two, hustle. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop. Yeah, but I'm telling you, many times. I once had a story. It was actually January 1st. I was driving back from New York. I had 4 kids then, and we were driving, and it started to snow and ice. Mom was heavy, and it's crazy. I flew off the road, flipped over twice. Mom was crazy. Mom was nissim, not a scratch, nobody. Came back, and the only thing that flew out the window was my phone. Back window smashed. It was mamash nissim. All the kids were in seatbelts. Pashat saved the whole thing. Crazy story. And I kept bringing my tefillin. I said, listen, a terrible accident. I need to know. He says, what do you want me to do? I should find accidents in the phone. He's like, got all mad at me. He's like, it doesn't work like that. It was kosher, Baruch Hashem, but you don't know. I once had this a lady called me. She says she needs me to come and check her mezuzahs of her house. Emergency. don't know this person from a hole in the wall. Came to the house. Like I said, I always open it up if it's an obvious thing. So I said, "What's the emergency?" She said that her daughter was standing in a bakery, and she was paying for her merchandise, and a car in the street lost control and went flying right into the bakery, and her daughter's both of her legs smashed. She was standing at the counter, came in, smashed. So she must check the mezuzahs. I heard that it could be connected with mezuzahs. Anyways, I'll never forget this. I took down her mezuzahs, and the side door, outside door mezuzah, I take it down. I told you, I always open it up. If it's a basic thing, the bottom two words of the mezuzah was cut in half, the letters. What's the bottom two words? It's very interesting how mezuzahs work. The end of V'hayim Shema, Hafta and Shema, and V'hayim Shemaya, those two paragraphs. The last two words, Al Haaretz, is on its own line. That's the way mezuzahs are written. So the word Al Haaretz, on the Aretz, all the legs of those letters were gone. Was not there in that mezuzah case. Somebody couldn't fit the cloth into the mezuzah, into the cover, so they cut the bottom to fit the cloth into the mezuzah. I told the lady, I said, listen, I'm just telling you, this is the fact. These letters on the ground, Hadishkim Tislach. Yimamish, you push it, don't know. Yimamish, I'll tell you a mice. I won't tell you that other mice, but I'll tell you as the Chagim to this mice mentioned, Rabbi Runner. A mezuzah mice and a Chanukah mice. You know that you have to do the mitzvahs to get Yidden, to wake them up a little bit. So a couple years ago, I decided that I have to touch somebody honest, right? The Hashem met the Mashiach, right? Remember the story? You know the story? Hashem met Mashiach in the Heichel Mashiach. You know the story?
Yeah.
And he asked Mashiach, "Masai Kasimar, when are you coming? Enough of the jokes. When are you coming?" So Mashiach said, when you start to spread, when you're going to spread the well springs, the deep parts of the Torah out to the CHUTZA, to the outside, Mashiach's going to come. And so a couple of years ago, I said to myself, the Galus is going, but we got to get to the CHUTZA. Where's the most CHUTZA? Where's the biggest CHUTZA, So I was thinking about, at least, for my little, gegend, where's the most CHUTZA? So I said, the biggest CHUTZA is in these teenage kids. I want to bite it up. Bar mitzvah, I'm telling you, that was mamash CHUTZA. I'm just telling you that. You have to trust. It was mamash CHUTZA she'ein kamayo.
Put the bar in bar mitzvah.
Yeah, there was no mitzvah. It was just the bar. Yeah. It was mamash crazy. And the parent asked the kid, what kind of entertainment will suit your typus, And the kids tell the parents, and the parents say, okay, we're going to hire that. Off the rocket. Anyway, so I said, okay, I have to do something for these kids. I said, what could I do in Canada? So I said, maybe I should make a MENORA out of hockey sticks. We could talk to the kids. The hockey, all they know is hockey. That's all they know, hockey schmacky. So I decided, how do you make a hockey stick MENORA? And I decided, and I spoke to Loblaws, on Simcha Claire. It's a big fancy Loblaws. And they said that if I make it, they'll let me keep it right at the front. So there's no way anybody, thousands of people a day shop, there's no way you could buy even a cup of water without walking by this. So I thought, okay, you make hockey sticks, you put a wire through, make a light bulb, Anyways, from one guy to another guy, some guy, I put him on Tefillin every Friday, and he's into entertainment business and movie business. So he connected me to a guy that makes props for these big movie shoots. So I called this guy, and I said, listen, this is what I want to do. I make a pencil, a bunch of hockey sticks for this way, that way, a shamash. And the guy sends me back, mamash, in a few hours, a beautiful computer picture of what it would look like. Mamash, it looked beautiful. I said, well, comma, he makes props for movies, Anyways, let me figure it out. A few days. Finally, he comes back to me. He says, Rabbi, I could do it to you $19,000. You ever paid $19,000 for a minute? Paid $19,000 for a minute. This guy's off his rocket. Yeah. Well, technically, in the light bulb sockets, I could put candles if I want. Yeah, for why not? At least for the Pesuma Nissa, I could have bulbs. And I told him it has to be, I want a 9 feet, big one, but I should be able to, take it apart, easy, put it into my car. I don't want to rent the truck every time. Anyways, $90,000. I started laughing. I said, off your rocket sugar. I said, better price. So, okay, let me see what I could do. Anyways, calls me back a few days later. Rabbi, I figured out another way how to do it. I could do this for you for $14,000. I'm thinking to myself, $14,000 from Menorah. Yeah, it's not Shabbat, it's gold. So I would Menorah. So I said to him, listen, it's Hanukkah, it's the holiday of miracles. Let's do it. It was only like 2 weeks left to Hanukkah. It was like no time. And I knew I thought we got to get it to the CHUTZA. So I need these teenage kids. I want them to be excited about something, So I said, let's do it. And I have no idea how I'm going to pay for it. No, mamish, I can't explain to what it means. You know what it means? No idea? You don't know what it means, no idea. He always has reserves. He doesn't know. This is mamish, no idea. Anyways, so I called the guy that told me, he gave me the connection. I said, you're off, you're right. You give me a connection to this guy. He wants $14,000, but I gave him the go ahead. He says, listen, every year, you know me, I donate you $5,000 to all the good stuff you do. Use my 5 for there. He says, now you only need 9. I said, okay, only 9. Anyway, it comes Chaf Gimel or something. It was 2 days before Hanukkah. I called the guy. He says, it's ready. Come pick it up. So I go to his warehouse and I pack it up into my car. He goes, Kislev. So I said, listen, I could give you $5,000 now, but you have to remember that the holiday of Hanukkah is 8 days, and it's the holiday of miracles. So I'll bring it to you at the end of the week. So he makes me sign a paper. I go, he makes me sign a paper. And I sign a paper. I take the Menorah. I go to the Lablas and I set it up, beautiful Menorah. And I made a big picture of a drone. And I said, anybody that takes a selfie next to the Menorah goes into our raffle for a drone. The vibe, I get everybody's emails. Right? So I put the sign, and it's where I'm getting like every 10 minutes, another emails coming and people are taking selfies with the Menorah. Anyways, I come home a few hours later. I open my computer and I get an email from a lawyer. He says, dear, Rabbi Deitsch, whatever. He says, a lady died in the community. And she tells me like this, says her name is Miss Kaplan with a C. Normally it's not, right? And I think to myself right away, I remember years ago, I hung mezuzahs in an apartment for a lady named Kaplan with a C. Because I took the mezuzahs that I brought them to Rabbi Aronov, and he charged me $7 to check it out, something, whatever. And she made me meshuggah. She wanted a receipt, $65. She made me so meshuggah for this. I hung those mezuzahs, and I was like, let me get out of here. Have a nice day. I'm done. Let me get out of here. Anyway, the lawyer writes, dear Rabbi, Miss Kaplan died a few months ago, and she put your Chabad into her will for 2% of her estate. Her estate settled today, $450,000, and 2% of that is $9,000. Would you like me to drop it at your office, or would you like me to put it in the mail? That was the email. That's it. And I don't know this one. I never heard of this guy. Garnished. Mamish like that. Like a CHUTZA. That's it. Our job, and I don't mean our job, our job, right? And sometimes it's not so comfortable. Okay, so you say l'chaim, and it makes it a little more comfortable. That's it. We can't use always, our mashal. I want to side with this story. When being brought up in New York, I'll tell you this. It was in, I want to say it was either Tafshim Memtes or Tafshim Nun, 1989 or 90. And you're being a young bacher, you're brought up in Crown Heights. It's a certain atmosphere, of craziness, of hoo-ha, you know? Anyways, in 1988 was Shnas Hakel. And the Rebbe said that every Shabbos since it's Shnas Hakel, you should go out to shuls and say over Dvar Torah, the Makel Killis. Yeah, the Rebbe took the whole idea of a Shabbos shluf out the window. That doesn't exist in Lubavitch. That's over history. No such thing of a Shabbos shluf. It's basically a shluf from Gashmius, only Ruchnius. No more Gashmius. It's like crazy. Anyway, so that's it. Go Chazer Advar Torah. Anyways, so when the Shnas Hakel was over, everyone, finally it's over. We don't have to go do this anymore. The Rebbe says, you know what? It was going so good. Let's continue every Shabbos. Anyway, so I went to Shul Bar Park, Shul Flatbush, whatever. Anyways, I was maybe 14, maximum 15, and it was a very freezing cold Shabbos. It was hailing outside. The streets were ice, sliding. Cars were sliding. It was crazy, and it freezing rain. And I went in the morning. I decided I'm going to get up early. We'll learn a little bit on a cold Shabbos. So I came to 770, and there was an older bacher there. Comes over to me, and he doesn't even know me from a hole in the wall. Deitsch, come with me. Yeah, we're going to Shul Flap. Am I going to tell the guy no? So I put back on my coat, my earmuffs, everything. We're going. Anyways, a good hour walk. Coming to the shul, and everybody in the shul was like, "Wow, that's crazy! You guys came this Shabbos. This is nuts." They were like so amazed, I'm this younger guy. I just walked to keep the guy company, And one of the people in the shul says to this older bacher, he says, "It's amazing. How do you do this? How do you walk in this weather? Like, it's so cold. I remember he said, if you knip your ear, you feel like it falls off. How did you? I barely made it from my house." So the bacher says, "It's a big deal. The Rebbe get them Koiches." And the guy's like, "What?" And this bacher says, "Yeah, what don't you understand? The Rebbe gets Koiches." And he's like, the guy was like, didn't know what to do. The Rebbe gives you Koiches. Yes, this is what don't you understand? He says, "How do you say such a thing?" The Rebbe gives you Koiches. Comes from Hashem. He says, "No, you don't understand." Anyway, they get into this whole fight. The guy goes to the Gabba. He says, "We can't let these guys talk." And I'm like, "You're not going to let this older bacher speak? I mean, come on, we just walked the whole thing. I'd be nice, And no, we're not letting him talk. He says such stupid things. We're not letting him talk." Anyways, what are you going to do? Finally, the Rav comes over and he asks the bacher, he says, "Is this true that you said this? Like, is that?" He says, "How do you say such a thing? The Rebbe, you say that Hashem gives you." So Bach said, "What don't you understand? Hashem gives the Koiches to the Rebbe. The Rebbe passes it down to us. And that's how we have this koyach to go out and do this." He says, "Oh, that's what you mean? That's a different story." The Rebbe was so impressed. He gets up in the bima, he knocks on the bima. Yeah, they slick. Yeah, mamutza. So the Rav gets on the bima, and he says, "These Lubavitch Buchlim, they came here in the cold weather." He says, "We're going to ask them to say it Torah," and the Bach gives it Torah, and we go back. Now, you have to remember, those days, the Rebbe Fabrenged, 1:30 in the afternoon, Shabbos was a Fabrengen. Try to imagine your Shabbos scheduled day. When you finish davening, the cholent, your daf yomi, everything, and then you're ready, where's the closest couch? But you got to run to 7 Fabrengen 1:30. That's the way it was. 1:30 is Fabrengen. So we had to make it back from Flatbush on time for the Fabrengen. So we rushed back and walked, make it alive. Anyways, Sunday morning, this rabbi was so impressed of this whole ordeal, he decided he's going to come Sunday to 770. Because Sunday the Rebbe used to give out the dollars for tzedakah, and he decided he's going to get in line and he's going to thank the Rebbe for sending the bell. And this piece, what I'm going to tell you now, is there's a video of it because they had videos of the Sunday dollars thing. Yeah. So they go by. He goes by the Rebbe, and he says to the Rebbe, he says first he says, "Ich habe am Morgen gelernt als Kind bei in Temche Tmimim."
So he said the roof.
The Rav says. They learned from about Yeshua. So the Rebbe says, Amol, once you're a bacher, once you learn to tell Chatzimim, you're always a tam. So he tells the Rebbe, you see this on the video, he tells the Rebbe, he says, many years ago I came and you told me the same thing. So the Rebbe tells him that sometimes the Rebbe there was no jokes. Even the Rebbe had a big sense of humor, but it wasn't a joke. It was and it's the thing. The Rebbe tells him, please don't make me say it to you a third time. Mamish, it's really like sharp, Then he says to the Rebbe, he says, I came to upthanking the Rebbe for sending the Bachrim in the freezing rain. So you said freezing rain. That was the words this guy uses. He says, freezing rain. That's how you say it in Yiddish? Ice, I don't know. So that's what he says. What? Black ice. That's how you say it, freezing rain. Huh? That's what the Rav says. That's what he says. He says, you sent them in the freezing rain. You gave them so much koyach to come to our shul to say over chassidus. The Rebbe looks at him, the Rebbe says, it's not my koyach. The Eibusher gives me the koyach and I pass it down. Exactly those words. You can't deny it. It's on the video. I'm telling you. It's just, it's not about me. I'm just helping, passing it around. That's what it is. So when it comes, Yitas Kislev, it's Rosh Hashanah. What's Rosh Hashanah? It's not just a joke. If somebody thinks that words are nothing, then fine, the Hashanah is a joke. But when it says Rosh Hashanah, it's a time that what's the Pshat Pnimis HaTorah? Just to get a deep thought, to get a geschmack, a deep thought. And also, it's not just that, it's to get deep. To get deep, we can't be just shallow people. We have to be deep. We have to get into the depth of what it's all about. That's what it's about. It's not that the chassidim, it has to be, that's the pnimis. Because otherwise, shallow is, it comes and goes. It's the pnimis. That's what the main thing is. So l'chaim, we should take it in a deep, in a pnimis. Sometimes you need l'chaim, sometimes more often than you think. But it should be a l'chaim. We should bring out the pnimis in a way that it should flourish inside of us and then affect the outside. L'chaim.
Anybody on Zoom wants to say l'chaim? Henry, Josh, anybody want to say l'chaim? You can unmute, say l'chaim. We'll hear you. Well, one again. 12 o'clock.
Pleasure. For you.
Oh, Elokeinu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Mashiachenu, Yeshenu, V'Yaleinu. Hey, la 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 We should meet at many happy Fabrengens, yeah?
Yeah. What do you get from? Where do you think? Nowhere. Nice. Maybe at the Rebbe.
What year were you born?
95.
Yeah.
Other.
Is it? Yeah.
More importantly,
I'm very impressed that you kept quiet the whole time.
I want to say I had a I just read this recently. It says that the Rebbe was nifted in Piana. They buried him in Hamich.
So it was somewhere else.
Yeah, it says nifted in Piana, Nikva Bahadich.
Why? Because heads better.
Yes, what's the mice? I just half a year ago that what? Which direction? No, which direction to go? And he passed away, but there's no answer why he passed away and what happened. The mice I read half a year ago. That the governor, the city of Hadich, to the cemetery, Hadich, why? Because it was built without a permit. Built. I mean, they buried people without the permit. So we went to the mitzvah of it. What to do?
While this was happening, while the Alter Rebbe was nifted.
Years later. Years later. What should we do? The mayor of the city says that he's going to have to head this. Remember correctly, I got an article in these magazines. It's all. So he says they had an old one, a new cemetery, and it was done without a permit. So we have to bury everybody, and you have to. So he said, go to this city, this person, and tell him the mice. Was a chassid. And he says, what happened was they got permission from the province gave them permission, but the city didn't give them permission. So there's a loophole there how you can allow. He says, because I'm a husband of Al-Fadab, and Al-Fadab is buried in Hadich, I'm going to overrule, and I'm going to allow them to continue using the cemetery. All this is because Al-Fadab was buried in Hadich versus Piana, and the Yiddish cemetery from Hadich was a lot safer.
How far is the Hadich from Piana?
It seems like it's a few kilometers. Not far.
I just thought that
it was after the war. You weren't allowed to go.
in Hadich itself is buried like on a hill on the way down to the lake.
The river there.
The river is almost like a very weird, it's very strange
set up to walk. Another interesting some mice that connect this to the Kislev is that interesting mice that he came into Nikolai came to visit him, so he stood up. So Nikolai says, if you know I'm the king, why didn't he stand up right away? It took a few seconds before he stood up. So he said, I did this from Yaakov it says Yosef, he didn't kiss Yosef. Yosef can say Akiva, Yaakov didn't kiss Yosef. Why is he not saying Shema? In the middle of saying Shema, you couldn't find a better time. So it says, my Krishma, you look, they wash. Elamai, Yaakov was a Sha'ab to Yaakov to Yitzchak. To Yosef, second, is a Shayach Lamayab to Yosef. It's greater than the have to I never felt such like Shema Shabbat. It's such my Yisrael. I have to his Bain and his Abba to the Ebershter. And he saw that my Abba is greater
Then he said, from Mele, he was able to finish and kiss. He said, when you walked into my cell, he told the Tsar, I had such a aim of fachad. He came in there and I was bothered. How come I never had to is it shaykh that I spoke about possibly more than picture? So he told the Tsar, so I was burning in godless of later. I saw that my aim that I have less than I risked it. So Mele, that's why it took me a few seconds to stand up.
What's your name?
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's what the cascade.
You think? Uma now in Kislev.
Let's get back for the Shishuna.
Just recovered from the Russian bit.
So what did the guy that $1, the guy that told the Rebbe is going to No, he came by $. I think he never said this. He's back to that. And he was something on Mashiach. Never said eventually the guy came by $. Said, I'm going to Uman for Yom Tov. Yeah, guy came by $. Said, I'm going to Uman. They never said something along the lines of he's better than bringing Mashiach. Yeah. So he's better. Ask for Mashiach.
They say that I've helped him with the tzin that wants to make trouble with more.
I have an uncle. A Vilda. Also much. Uncle. So anyway, so he goes there for Yom Tov, and so he goes there for Yom Tov, and he puts the picture there.
Where?
Yeah, I think it's still there. It's a massive picture. Like a couple of stories tall. Like the biggest picture.
He got Shiner to pay for it. But so people came to him and said, "It's a big picture there." He said, "Listen, how do you know how the wrestler looked? It looked like this." He said, "I see a pun of Ish Kaddish." My uncle was a Vilda, so he goes there for a shana. Puts on film with guys that go there. He goes there, he puts on film. A lot of guys go there that they forget to put on film. This is Shkoyach for hosting. Should be many more simchas. Shkoyach for putting together. Goldberg Jr., what's your first name? Yeah, related to him, yeah?
Everyone really does.
Well, what's your name? Sorry.
Balter? In the Legends of Toronto. His father was
Yeah.
Right? There's a letter he wrote to Mason Lehoy, but he repeated he wrote to Chaim on the boat.
His father, Yosef Weinberg, Greenlass, and
From Europe?
he was
No, he didn't go to
Ruben Kolarsky. He didn't go to Montreal at the night, but he's part of the France.
the letter.
Did anyone say that? I just saw an article recently. He came from Portugal after running away from Europe. Portugal. Just a few years. It was like the last boat or something that came.
Who else was that? Friedrich's boat was the last boat that came to Sweden, but the Rebbe came from Portugal because that's where the ships were going.
I think it was also, they said, from the last boats that made it. There was a few other, I can't remember who the other one was with the story recently.
It's very ridiculous that the Fabrengen was trying hard to save the bubble. They have the letters now.
Oh, yeah?
The Fabrengen was trying to save the bubble with another. That was Truman. The Fabrengen went to the White House. That was Truman. Things change.
Tell me, raise and curse.
The master was about with passports, and the last minute they wasn't American.
You've already had which is very sponsoring.
And they see position.
he was a Latvian citizen.
The spinner.
Bubba was a
What's that?
The spinner.
He's a spinner, right?
Any schematic relation. That's why they hit it dead end. They tried very hard. They came to tremendous amount of
There was some passports that they
Back up
took in the last minute of the day before.
Americans said they don't have jurisdiction.
The what?
Americans said they don't have jurisdiction. I was 1 hour citizen.
I was born in Detroit.
So the one that came to America, he came. How did he make it? So they ended up there, but there must have been some case where he came to Grand Heights. Why? What?
10, 12 years.
I just read now from Yos. Saturday by the Fabrengen. I just read now Yechidus.
And
Saturday was by the Fabrengen.
Yeah.
we had a shas.
I remember somebody was outside of the room and
He wanted to look this up. He had a shas. Red ones. That's what he had.
This guy told me, the guy says he's waiting outside of his room. He was gonna go in. Here's inside.
I'm gonna look it up. It was on the Gemara and show it to all the letters. Otherwise, I've never looked those Gemara. From the Rebbe to the Father, Bracha, Mitzvah, I'm telling you my life general. I picked up those letters and it's like, oh, it's a sign. His mom was and everything should be okay. I think it was written, one of them was written when I was born. Is it in there? The original letter. That's what's hanging in my house. Are those letters.
He was hanging in his house, in his front door of his house. A big sign.
Yeah. Only when I'm not home. When I come down, I take it. So your wife puts it on. And I just want to know about the menorahs. The menorahs, you spend 14,000. My son goes to the final Cheder, and every year they have a menorah contest. I'm a big sports fan. So every year I make them a sugar. I do menorahs that are outrageous and pushes the envelope like this. So one year I made a menorah with all the sports teams from Toronto. Every Avodah Zarah was on there, in basketball and baseball and tennis. And out it came the Kedusha. And Rebbe said, I can't let it in. I can't. It's too much. Couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle the chutzahs.
He's just like Moshe Rabbeinu.
Who?
Moshe Rabbeinu
Didn't want to.
Sorry for the year.
Right. He didn't want it. Didn't want to take it. He said, I can't. I'm going to handle it. I said,
No, and he goes to Kohen. Moshe was a Kohen. I'm going to say Moshe was a Kohen and he lost.
no, you should only. Shukran, everybody who came on the Zoom, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. L'chaim, who's it, Ari?
L'chaim, yeah.
You enjoyed it?
Very nice.
You
thank
enjoyed it? Where'd you go?